So, ladies and gentlemen, Philip Eisner and Gregg Hurwitz.
So if you can hear me, clap twice. I like this. It's the power of Andrew the librarian.
I'm just looking at this wondering, should we? Do we need to?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Is this on? Okay. Do we have to turn this on?
Yeah, just hit the button that says push.
Hello, hello.
Light
Is that better? Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us here. Philip?
Yeah, not bad. Well, I had to make notes.
All right. Fair enough.
Next time we do this, let me go first. See, if I could write a book too, if I didn't play video games. This makes me sound like a troll.
That's just how you sound, Philip.
All right. So I actually have to because we are going to talk about Orphan X and The Last Orphan, because we are. And I have to, this is like one of the coolest things about working with Gregg is I've been an early reader of Gregg for, I think, the entire series. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is awesome. But the problem is I'm 2 manuscripts ahead of where we are. So there's going to be some things come up, but if I start about to spoil...
I'll have you executed.
No, don't do that. Just cut me off. If you can do that. So that's actually the thing I wanted to just get into, is the inspirations behind our villain in The Last Orphan, because it's such a turn from what you're usually doing.
So, Orphan X, for those of you who are familiar with him, is international assassin. He was pulled out of a foster home at the age of 12. He was trained in a silo to go places that the United States government could not, and to commit executions that are illegal under international law. Deep, buried deep, full black operation. And so the earlier stories about him are his conflicting, the one line that I put in every book around which the whole series coalesces for me is his handler, who becomes his father figure, Jack Johns, at the age of 12 tells him, the hard part will be making you a killer. The hard part will be keeping you human. And that, of course, are 2 trains on a collision course. So at a certain point, before the series begins, he's fled the program. He has a 1-800 number, 1-855-2-NOWHERE, which you can call, and you can see if he answers the phone. And he helps people who are in desperate need, who have nowhere else to turn, who are being terrorized by another human or group of humans. And he's the only answer as a wolf who can hunt wolves. And so he's been up against all manner of antagonists. This is the first book that marks him coming up and having a confrontation with an antagonist where the principal means of engagement is psychological and emotional. He's a master manipulator. He's a genius. He's a billionaire. And Evan could beat him every which way, with guns, with knives, with fists. That's not actually what's at stake. But what's at stake is the nature of his manipulation. Should we talk about the setup of The Last Orphan?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, okay.
Without, we don't want to...
We don't want to give anyone...
Yeah, it's like there's books out there, and
yeah,
if you don't already have a copy.
We won't peek too far inside the kimono at the moment, but we'll talk about the setup a little bit. So, essentially, Evan's been off the radar, being pursued by the same program that created him now for a number of years. And the President of the United States unleashes a massive manhunt to track him down. They've done this before, and this time he makes a tiny mistake and finds himself under the full control, bound, gagged, and wheeled in before the President of the United States. And essentially what she needs from him and demands of him is that he fill the boots once more of Orphan X and commit one last mission as an orphan in exchange for his life. And what she needs him to do is there's a renegade and quite rambunctious billionaire who operates outside, right at the edge of the rules of law. That might sound somewhat familiar to you, given our evolving cultural and political world. And basically, this guy has accrued so much power that he has almost as much power as the President of the United States. Again, this is something that we've been seeing and playing with and looking that future in the eye a little bit. And what he does is he lives in the Hamptons on Billionaire Row. And he has these massive, like, Great Gatsby-esque parties. And he invites media moguls and senators and Supreme Court justices and military chiefs. And he puts every possible sin on display for them. It's their choosing. It's a banquet of sin. But there's cameras hidden all through the mansion. And so his Rolodex is immensely powerful. And his ability to pull levers in a way that's seemingly legal. You know, it's interesting. When I was researching how to set this up in a way that was overtly legal, not overtly legal, that would allow him to escape the prying eyes of IRS and everything else, actually used the template, the model that Jeffrey Epstein used, which we can talk about later if any of you are interested. But essentially, he has a step of control, but he can pull any kind of lever and get anything done. He's as I described in the book, he's a first-rate mindfucker. He can get into people's brains like nobody's business. And so Evan's faced with this choice. He's captured. You know, his code is, ever since he fled the program, that he's never going to kill somebody based on orders from above anymore, unless it's aligned with his personal moral compass. And now he's being asked to go and execute somebody because they represent a threat to the President of the United States. So the question is, which is he going to choose? His life or his code? Unless he can find the third way. And that third way is the way of the orphan. And so that's what we're here to learn. But so his engagement with his character, his name is Luke Devine, is very different than any other engagement, like I said. Luke, to me, represents an ascendant power in the culture. Luke represents the intellect that falls in love with itself. That's also, Milton is Lucifer in Paradise Lost, right? The intellect that becomes so brilliant and so conniving and so beguiling that it believes it has all the answers. And Luke's manic. He's got a brain that runs amazingly and intensely. And so Evan's up against him, and he's putting these tendrils in as they circle each other to try to get to Evan through psychological and emotional manipulation as he's trying to determine if this is somebody who he can kill in a manner that's aligned with his code.
And at the same time, Luke is figuring out where are the levers. Here's the levers I'm used to. Oh. This is now interesting. This is Evan's not boring like all the other guys.
Uh-huh.
Because what motivates most people doesn't motivate Evan.
Yeah.
And instead of laying back, that makes Luke lean in. One of the things I found was really interesting, and we talked about this when I remember reading the original draft, and this is Evan's dark twin.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is the twin brother that never learned how to fight, so he learned how to manipulate.
That's right. That's an interesting way to look at it. And he says to Evan his dark offer on the table as Evan's trying to determine something. So one of the things Evan discovers, this doesn't give too much away, this is still, we're talking some first act stuff still, is that a young man and woman were killed at one of these parties or disappeared in and around one of these parties. And what Evan's trying to determine is, if you had a role in that, he's saying to Luke Devine, I'm going to put you in the ground. All the abstract stuff, the levers of power, the corruption, the manipulation, he is agnostic as to whether that's better in the hands of Luke Devine or the president and the government. He doesn't operate on that level. He operates in the concrete. And Luke Devine's making all these intellectual and abstract arguments. And what he's basically saying to Evan is, I do what you do. I just do it at a more important level. I do it at a grander level. I determine what legislation moves forward. I'm pulling the real levers of power. And you're down there like scurrying in the streets and alleys worried about a single person. But for Evan, that concrete nature of morality is all that matters. And so every time Luke makes him an offer, like, can you imagine if we paired up with me up here with all this power and you down there? And Evan comes back to one young man, one young woman. If they were dead and you did, that's all I care about. That's as far as I'll allow my code of morality to go. If I'm going to act as executioner, right? Judge, jury, and executioner. And so he keeps everything concrete, and Luke's always trying to kind of pull him north into abstractions. But Evan's learned, having operated for the Department of Defense in these abstract arenas, how much corruption and rot moves through them.
What I actually love about that is, and I just realized this, so what you're actually covering thematically and morally is the brothers Karamazov in less than half the length, and you're not giving me a C when I had to read that novel. Which is one of the only C's I've ever got in English.
When Philip read the first draft of this, I gave him a C+. He was quite pleased with that.
No, it was a B.
Look, this series is, what's interesting is, and I didn't even know this until I started writing. I started writing this book when I was on the cusp of 40. And so it's like, well, what was happening for me? 40 was rough for me. Now I'm on the cusp of 50, and I'm looking forward to it much more. But cusp of 40 for me was me thinking, man, is this everything there is? Am I just going to re-flip this all over again and write another 20 books and 10 scripts and 100 comics, and that's how it goes? And I was trying to kind of think about ways that I might break through the first part of my life, the early codes of my life, the rules and the stories that I'd operated by, to figure out what new ones would await so that the second half of my life, might break new ground or ideally reach new heights. And it took me a while to realize that that's what the series is about. I mean, Evan operates by the 10 Assassin's Commandments. The first one's assume nothing. The second one is how you do anything is how you do everything. There are these like black and white Assassin's Commandments handed down to him from Jack Johns, who was his CIA handler and father figure. And the first book finds him breaking all 10 of them in the first mission. Well, that's not a normal beginning to a series. But what the series is, I've realized as I've gotten older, one of my favorite quotations about writing is from Joe Didion. She says, I write so I know what I think. And so a lot of times, I'm not thinking like Luke Devine at an abstract level and then filling in the specifics. I want to write a book about loyalty. I want to write a book about intellectualism. I'm writing from the grit and the gut and the sweat and the blood and the specific scenes and the dialogue and the character interactions up, and then the themes introduce themselves. And that's true at a bigger level. But one of the things I realized as I was writing the series is this is really about Evan's process of becoming. It's about his process of becoming a real human, because he was raised in these silos. He's borderline psychopathic. He's raised as a full operational machine, but Jack trained him to stay human. And in a lot of ways, that's his Achilles heel. That's all of our Achilles heel, if you think about it. He starts the series, it's like he's Pinocchio, but he wants to be a real boy. And this series of books it's a story about the process of becoming human, of learning. I say in the books, he never learned to speak the strange language of intimacy. He doesn't understand it. He's like outside of the society looking in. But he wants to learn. He wants to be a real boy. He wants to understand what the world is, but everywhere he moves forward towards that, there's broken glass. There's things he doesn't understand. And so this is another step in that, really, as you're saying, like his evil twin who is thought intellectually, well, he's up against something now that he has to survive a threat that isn't just physical, right? Isn't just the government coming after him again, or the menace of the people who are looking to terrorize the clients who he is trying to help. This is about somebody who's interested in getting into his psychology and emotions to twist his brain and turn it upside down, along with the massive threat of an incredibly well-armed group of guards who surround Luke Devine in the shell. So it's got both of those elements.
He's got a huge army. And one of the elements, like we're talking about his Achilles heel, specifically with X, is what makes him not a sociopath or psychopath, is that he is aware that he's missing this thing, and he wants it, as opposed to being made aware that he's missing a thing and dismissing it as unimportant, as having a value. So he sees this value, he sees other people interacting, and that's literally the thing that makes him vulnerable to Luke Devine. If he had been just a straight-up sociopath, Luke Devine would be in the ground, and it would have been a short story.
Well, there's nothing easier than being a true believer, where you have all of your views are given you, all of your values are given to you, right? You have a roadmap, you follow the roadmap, you're fine. We see that increasingly in politics or in the culture or in conversations with, that uncle everybody has, right? Or that crazy aunt everybody has. where people have the constraints of their lives figured out all the way, and everything that they say is going to be regurgitated, every position in advance. It's like talking to a propaganda machine. And that's what the other orphans are. The other orphans were trained to be true believers. And I always think about, Achilles, when we talk about Achilles' heel, it's because Achilles was dipped. Where was Achilles dipped? Do you remember?
Was it Leith or Styx?
I mean, one of the two.
But
he was held by his heel when he was dipped, and so that's the one part of him that isn't protected. And that's sort of what Jack did with him. Jack loved this boy. That's one of the things I wanted to do. When Evan was taken out of the foster home and trained up in this brutal, siloed existence, he was trained by the world's greatest experts in psyops, enhanced interrogation, sniping, hand-to-hand combat, knife fighting. But that spark that Jack kept, Jack really loved him. And Jack wanted to keep that bit of humanity alive. And it's that's his Achilles heel. That's the one piece of him that kept him from being a true believer, like a lot of the other orphans in the program. And that's a dangerous thing. He was being trained to be essentially an expendable weapon. He's raised to be a one-time use disposable weapon for the government. If he gets caught somewhere overseas, U.S. government denies him, and he can be tortured to pieces or executed. And no one's ever going to care or miss him. He's an unwanted human because he came out of a foster home. He was taken off the radar. There's nobody to miss him. But that piece to say, I still want to keep you human, is the biggest curse. But every curse has a blessing. And the blessing is, this is Evan's journey. This is what he's moving towards through the books.
And he's, with my favorite notable exception, two favorite notable exceptions, I suppose, he's the only orphan that's actually allowed him to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's saved Joey before she could be truly damaged.
Uh-huh.
And nothing's wrong with Candy. So, can't beat her.
There's two characters. One is Josephine Morales, who goes by Joey, who's a genius hacker. She's 17 years old now in the series. He meets her when she's 16, and she's a washout from the orphan program. And how many of you are familiar with Joey Morales in the series? Okay. So basically, Joey, when he first gets her, it's the last thing he wants. He's put that he has to be responsible for this young woman when he's in the middle of a man-on-fire mission. It's the last thing he wants is this mouthy, brilliant, tough, rugged hacker who's a 16-year-old girl at the time. And I was planning, she's introduced in the third book in the series, which is called Hellbent. I was planning to kill her at the end of Hellbent. I had it all that's all where it was going. And if you read that third book, you'll see exactly the scene where she was supposed to be killed. But in the process of writing that book, she brought out so many sides of him. She pushes him and infuriates him and teases him and, angers him. There was so much nuance that she brought out as a reflection of him that she became sort of the key staple. She's almost the number 2 in the series now. She became the light that brings out all these facets around humanity and engagement from Orphan X. And so she lives on in all the books. And his relationship with her, she calls him her uncle person. His relationship of her being kind of his charge is his biggest connection to humanity. It's where he feels safest. And the other character who Philip's referencing is Candide McClure, whose name is Orphan V. And she's the ultimate femme fatale. She is deadly and beautiful. She was Evan's nemesis through the early books. And they've since forged a sort of incredibly wary collaboration on certain missions where they can align their outlook. But she's as deadly as a female assassin as Evan is as an assassin. So Orphan V represents in some ways the female version of him. And she's sort of one step behind him in that process of becoming human.
Yeah, she's still, they're at detente, is what I would look at it. It's if in the next novel, Candy's she takes shots at Evan, and Evan's why are you doing this? She's bored.
Somebody said that the best template for their relationship is Batman and Catwoman. Are they friends? Are they lovers? Are they enemies? Is one of them going to kill the other one? Is one of them,
And again, not exclusive. These are not exclusive concepts.
That's right.
Yeah.